What was your worst experience from dating apps? Before we start with the first story, please hit a subscribe and ring the notification bell to stay updated with us. Story 1. I matched with a goth girl who seemed really down to earth. Profile seemed normal and everything, so I swiped and we matched. Everything went well, and we decided to meet at the park and walk our dogs. Her dog went to shit, so I handed her one of my baggies to pick it up. She bare-handed her dog and carried it about 20 feet to the trash can and wiped her hands on the back of her jeans. I made sure not to let her touch me for the rest of the time. Story 2. I was catfished. I thought she was legit, and we talked for months. I went to go visit her, and it was a guy claiming to be her best friend, and she had to run to pick up a friend who was drunk. The woman in the profile never returned, and he was trying his best to get in my pants. Story 3. The whole damn thing, honestly. Ghosting, cheating. Pretty sure the only thing I've gotten out of this whole experience is depression, trust issues, and budding alcoholism. I have no clue why I bother continuing to try. Story 4. Honestly, meeting people who I vibed well with and could really see myself dating, only to eventually find that it just wasn't there. It turns out that's a lot harder than the standard dating app bullshit. Really makes you question whether you will find it. Same for me. Great first couple dates, sometimes even hook up, and then she makes no real effort to take things to the next level, or sometimes just ghosts. Just makes you feel like you'll never be good enough. Story 5. Meeting a girl, and after I felt uncomfortable around her, I went home. I don't know, it was an extremely uncomfortable experience with things she said to me and how she behaved. I was upfront with how I felt. She then found me on a bunch of other social media platforms and kept messaging on all those. Freaked me out. Story 6. I met this girl on Bumble who seemed really sweet, and we clicked super well at first. She told me that she was stuck in a lease with her ex, who she broke up with a couple months before, but she was trying to move back in with her mother. I wasn't thrilled, but I was thinking, whatever, it's not her fault. A week later, I had lost my virginity to her, and a couple days after that, I got a text from her telling me that she had a wonderful time with me, but that she realized she was still in love with her ex. Apparently, I made her feel like her old self, and that included being in love with a man who started dating her when she was 17 and he was 26. Stupidly, I gave her a chance to make up her mind, and she said she would pick me even though her brain told her not to. However, the final straw was that she insisted on staying friends with him, and that I was controlling for not wanting to date her if she would do that. Story 7. I got catfished. She was heavily editing her photos using Facetune or whatever. At the date, we were talking, and she just pulled up her phone and started mindlessly scrolling on social media. At that point, I just stopped talking, and she was like, yeah, you keep talking, I can hear you. The worst part is that I went to another city to meet up with her. Story 8. I dated someone a long time ago. That guy didn't want to use a condom the first time we had sex, because he wants to fill me with his babies. Yikes. So it stopped right there, and I never saw him again. And one who seemed different than the pictures and only talked about himself. Other dates were thankfully fine or great. Story 9. This happened to a friend of mine. Matched with a girl, and not too long after they agreed to meet up and have coffee. Meets her at this cafe, and she pulls out a tablet pretty much right after they sit down and order. She starts a presentation about some dodgy pyramid scheme. My poor mate was too polite to say anything. He sat through the whole thing, politely declined, and even paid for the bill. Never heard from her again. Story 10. I had a great first date with a girl from Tinder. She was super happy to set up a second date for later that week, and was sending me memes and chatting until the night before. The day of, she decides to stand me up in below freezing weather without warning. I was texting her asking where she was, and I could see her come online just to ignore me. Besides that, probably the multiple matches who would agree to a date, cancel the day before, pretend to be interested in rescheduling the date, and then drag out the process for weeks until I gave up and unmatched. Interested people will make time for you. 99.9% of the time, no one is busy for weeks on end. Story 11. We went to the biggest coffee place in Munich, Marienplatz. crowded as a first date. Wasn't catfished. She looked hot and all. But we talked for like 3 hours, all great, up until she went on her knees, proposing to me. Creepy. Everyone looked at us and were at first disappointing. Angry looking at me for saying obviously no. She rushed out in tears. Had to tell the 100 people around me that it was out first date. Story 12. Matched with someone and agreed to go out after I got out of work. She was an hour late, texting me updates like running late, doing my hair, be there soon, etc. Shit happens. I can wait. Then she sent me a picture from outside the bar with my back turned, saying she was outside. I went to where the picture was taken, and she wasn't there. Decided I was tired of being f***ed with, and told her I'm leaving, and she seemed disappointed. Told her I'd be down to try again, but nothing happened. Story 13. Oh man, I have a few. I drove 2 hours to a date to get stood up by a salmon fisherman, a firefighter with a big Darth Vader tattoo, who was the spitting image of Jeffrey Dahmer. Told me he couldn't get off in the bedroom unless I let him drag me around the house by my hair. A heavily bearded Jewish surfer met me for coffee and called me fat. I am not. A red-haired Russian man who continually referenced the Ukrainian uprising in disgust and carried a vintage 6-shooter as his EDC nearly set his bedroom on fire with a candle while we watched Airplane and shotgunned vodka. An alcoholic with a big hole right in the middle of his kitchen floor told me my Spanish was terrible. Granted, my Spanish sucks. I was stood up by a shredded engineer and had a short romp with a pile driver who insisted his cows were too smart to eat the poisonous plants that grew all over their field. There was a bodybuilder who told me that guns couldn't stop him from doing anything he wanted, that he was simply too strong to be affected by bullets. Then, icing on the cake, I got ghosted by a train conductor with a nose ring whom I had dated for 2 entire months. That joke writes itself somehow. That was a new low for me. Story 14. Okay, I got a twofer. This was from OKC, but I don't think which dating site it was matters. I'm chick of the fatter variety, and I always post a current body shot because I don't like people wasting my time if they're not going to be into me. I never got why people post misleading photos, like people aren't going to notice when you meet. So I was talking to this guy, seemed nice enough, and HR asked me to buy me dinner. Okay, sure. He had only posted a face shot. When we met, he was easily clearing over 450 pounds. Not really into that, but I stuck it out because he seemed like a nice person. We get coffee first, and then walked over to the restaurant. Now, I'm no athlete, but I do like to hike and rough woods camp. I may not be winning any marathons, but I can walk for miles. This poor dude was wheezing within 20 feet of walking. Clearly, it was an effort for him. I felt bad for the guy, and I try to be open-minded, but I can't date someone that unhealthy. We get to the restaurant, which was really good, and he tells me about himself, and he told me about his roommate who was dating a crackhead. They would f*** all over the place with the doors open, do all kinds of hard drugs, and were just slovenly dicks. He also told me he was a dom, and started to imply we could go make out later and he would top me. I said I had to leave after dinner and scooted as soon as it was polite to do so. 6 to 7 months later, I try my luck again, this time with a photographer. We got along okay, conversation went well, and in the course of the date he asked me about bad dates I've been on. I brought up the larger guy from before and mentioned the wheezing and the pushing to top me, and he asked if the guy was named 30th. Turns out I was on a date with the guy's roommate. I don't use dating sites anymore. Story 15. Shit, I have a weird one. Went on a first date with a girl off Hinge. 5 minutes into the date, she was already talking about her past cocaine addictions and showing me her scars from attempting suicide. She pointed to people at the bar and would be like I've gotten all of them to buy me drinks before, and then said that she couldn't wait to drain my wallet at fancy restaurants. At this point, I was very not into my date and was just looking forward to it being over. In hindsight, I absolutely should have just ended the date. But since there was food next door and I was hungry, we then got some food. At one point, we both went to the bathroom. When we both came back, our waitress said something like, "Oh, there you are. I thought you might have just left mid-meal." My date then nearly started a scene by claiming that the waitress was being racist at her for insinuating that we weren't going to pay our bill. Luckily, she relaxed, but then got way too relaxed and started to slightly loudly sing about her, and I quote, "Hairy butthole." I really wish she hadn't done that. When we left the restaurant, she walked over to all the dinner tables and blew out the candles. When I asked why she did so, she said that she disassociated and couldn't remember doing that. Now, this would have been the perfect time to get the fuck out, but I was a pushover and let her convince me to swing by her house Twominus 3 blocks away to say hi to her cats before leaving. On the way there, she needed to pee and literally dropped her fucking pants and pissed all over the public sidewalk in her shoes. No hesitation, just piss. I was speechless. I still can't believe how weird and uncomfortable the whole night was. The last insane part of the night was when, after seeing her cats briefly and then using the restroom, she attempted to naked woman me. It was so fucking awkward and she lost her shit when I clearly wanted to leave. She said, and I quote, "You're just gonna leave me like everyone else in my life." So yeah, that's probably my worst. Alright folks, that's a wrap. If you like more of this, please hit a like button and subscribe to the channel. You can also share your thoughts in the comment below. I'll see you in the next video.